Welcome back to Black Lotus Buds. I'm Kevin.
And I'm Michael. Thanks for joining us.
We're kicking off our 8th episode on the channel where we're talking all things trading cards.
That's right. And today I wanted to start out talking about something a little off topic before we get into talking about, the new year and what's coming up. And it's what I've been doing for like a good amount of hours every week, and that is playing Path of Exile 2. And in particular, I wanted to ask you about the game difficulty and how you foresee it going in the future, because I watched a bunch of negative feedback on the end game. And despite the amount of hours that I think you and I both played, a lot of people are saying that it's too unforgiving and too difficult. But how have you felt about like the balance of the game so far?
Early game, I mean, we've only gotten up to, I would think, maybe 75% through Act 3 from the basic difficulty. I would think that they've got room to make it more wild, but overall, the experience has been pretty good. I think the difficulty has been challenging. Walking through everything, killing every monster we've killed, not really leaving any monsters untouched, and actually progressing through that way, I feel like it's worked out smoothly, as far as like we've been able to keep up with killing everything for the most part, except for some of these bosses, which makes sense. You have to learn how they destroy you, and then just work around that. But I've had a good time with it. I do think it is on the difficult side of things when you compare it to, like, say, the run through of Diablo 2. But I don't know if that's because we were just so experienced in Diablo 2 and I've forgotten all those very, very first times that we were actually running through the game in Diablo 2. What about you?
Well, it's a different type of difficulty. I would agree with you 100%. About that it is very difficult, but I've enjoyed it. And like you said, we've met each challenge with success. And so I don't want them to make it less difficult, but a lot of the complaints are coming with it being too brutal for endgame. And the cool thing is, just like there's balance that you have to make in a trading card game with, the Pokemon being maybe overpowered, or there being too much power creep, or in Magic they having to ban cards because they become too abusive. The cool thing about a video game is that you don't have to get stuck with a balance. You can just permanently change everything across the board, and you don't have to worry about the collectability of the cards, or certain card sets, because it's a virtual world that they have full power over changing. So I have a lot of faith in GGG. I do tend to trust these endgame players, but it's not that I don't trust their opinions. It's that I don't want the changes they seem to be asking for. Diablo 2 was a different kind of brutal, because it did come with knowledge of how to approach each thing. And I think Path of Exile comes with a different curve that's based on that roll dodge, and you have to outmaneuver the bosses. I think it was designed, as far as bosses go, to have to learn the dance of each boss.
Be present in the moment.
And Diablo 2 was maybe a little more focused on your build and gear. And so you maybe could really, like with the knowledge we have, you could create a character that really made it easy. You could tank a lot of attacks, and in Path of Exile, there's none of that. You're not going to overpower a boss without going to level up, I don't think. And the only way we've been able to progress was editing our build, but then we had to perform. We had to go and do the dance and do the thing. So I'm really enjoying it. I'm surprised at the negative feedback, and I'm trying to be very open-minded. I've started exploring all these various card games and trying to be open-minded to each one. Even Pokemon. I wasn't really hype on Pokemon when we started this podcast, and We're like 8 in now, I think, and it's just I'm now enjoying TCG Pocket. So I'm trying to be open-minded when people have negative feedback, but as far as it being difficult, it's like I want that. I enjoy that the most in a game, and although I don't want my time wasted, I definitely haven't yet experienced something that I wish they would completely change. And I'm hoping this is the early access, so I think we have time to make it better. And
Level
I
out
think the
that bell
devs are
curve.
open-minded to that.
Yeah. I don't think they're going to be too worried about opinions this early in, I would think, but I don't really know. I mean, you got to
They
think.
seem to be listening. When people make a suggestion, they seem to be changing things pretty immediately. But I only really read deeply the first patch notes, and they seem to basically just give a little. So people would complain the drops weren't good. So instead of just increasing drops, they took a step back and were like, well, what's bad about it? And people were complaining about specific orbs not really being useful and other ones not dropping. So what they did, I think, with that one was they made it so that the drop for orbs stayed the same, but you got the more useful one more often. And so they're listening and then making subtle changes and not really like panicking. And it just shows how much time they've already spent time balancing this, but they just need help with the quantity of opinions. They played it and did their best, but just like you and I could play through, and it's RNG too, so you can get a lot of different experiences. And so I have a lot of faith. I think it's going to be great, and I'm hoping that it is once we get to endgame and once it fully releases. But to be honest, dude, I just see so much potential. One of the things was about like losing. I was surprised to hear this about losing experience when you die at higher levels is like a heavy penalty. Like you lose a lot. But we discussed, Diablo had level 99, and it would take you like 4 months of playing it like a full-time job with a game of 7 other people willing to do the same, doing endless bail runs, which is the same boss.
Yeah.
Yep, nonstop. It's the one thing you did again and again. They took 3 or 4 minutes, and you had to run multiple CD keys to not get a temporary ban for doing it too quickly. And at that pace and skill level of nerddom, it still took 3 to 4 months. And I just come from that, and I know Path of Exile, I saw one estimate, it said about 200 hours to reach max level. And so if that's the case, I think it's very fair to demand that the players either up their skill level or change their build or upgrade and put attention to making it better in order to achieve it. So, you know what I mean? I don't think it's like the complaint like, oh, there's too much penalty, you lose too much progress. It's like, well, dude, it doesn't take but, a couple weeks, and, you can be there, right? Like, I guess it's more than, I guess it's a month and a half still.
Yeah, I want to know if these players are like asking for like a walkthrough, like where they're literally just walking through, destroying everything, or if they're open to it being difficult, and they're even on that note, then they're saying that there's trouble even with the best of the best items on, because this early on, you got to think. Not every unique has been picked up. Not every unique that's been picked up is a perfect role that is kind of what you're going to be looking for at the end of the day. And a year from now, there's going to be characters that are wearing all perfect gear and all have perfect builds. So that, I think, for end game discussions should be the time when the game makers are making those decisions if they need to tweak things here or there. I don't think they should be entertaining ideas when it comes to endgame this early on, just because they're only dealing with maybe 2% of the entire population of players who've played right now, getting to that state right now and having opinions about it. But those players, I don't know, are they using these trading avenues and they're just buying their equipment from other players and putting it on their character? Are they finding and only using what they find? Their gear, which is what you and I have been doing.
They're finding their stuff because there's not a lot of players at that level anyway.
Yeah.
But the thing is, they were complaining about finding some sort of map variation that was kind of rare. But it's like, dude, how long has this thing been out? It's like 13 days, I think. It's been out, I think it came out the
From the
6th.
6th. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right.
So it's like not even 2 weeks in, and these people are kind of like complaining, like, oh, I'm not progressing fast enough. And they're at the end of the game. And they're like, I haven't found this last thing I need to find the final boss. It's like, I don't want this RPG to take me 2 weeks to be completely finished with it. Like, if that's the case, I think they would have failed. It's kind of like opening up a box of cards and being like, I didn't pull the rarest card. I don't like this. I want to pull, because if you made it so that you pulled the rarest card every box, it would be no fun. You would just buy the box and you would get the card, and eventually you would get bored of doing that. Part of it, the fun, is the challenge of like, you don't know if you're going to get it or not,
Yeah, it makes it more suspenseful. Yeah. Very interesting, though. It's a fun game, especially with our fully developed experience in Diablo and our absolute.
How much overlap do you think is for people that play card games and people that might play an action RPG?
Probably there's definitely a lot of overlap, but I think at the end of the day, there's probably less strategy in like POE2 in my mind. And I say that because in a deck, you have full control over every single card that goes into the deck that you shuffle, and that now it's all based on just chance where those cards lie. But you know that they're all in that deck. In the game of Path of Exile, you're just willy-nilly praying that you're going to pull, a unique out of the boss, or a couple of rares, and then put those items on, and hopefully they work for your build. So yes, there's strategy. Of course there is. But I think you've got more control over your strategy in card games versus.
Yeah, I would argue that they're more similar than that, because I think it's similar to like a new player playing a draft, and they would just see it as you're willy-nilly pulling out a card and putting it in and using it as your deck. Where you mentioned in the last tournament with Magic the Gathering that the player actually didn't pick the rarest card because they had that insight to how it would affect their deck. And I think the same will be true for Path of Exile, because this is our first play through the game. So we're just picking up items, trying to put on the ones we think are best. But, we will come to the point where we have enough knowledge where that massive passive skill tree and the different combinations of skill we use and the attributes to items we are looking for will become more routine and more strategic because we have that knowledge. And right now, I think it's just that it's like I'm still exploring the passive tree because it's too massive to know. But I think eventually, I feel like I was like this in Diablo 2, where throughout the whole game, I knew what breakpoints I needed and where. But, if you were looking at a new player, they're just going to be picking up items, throwing on what they think is best, and, like, hoping that they get good drops. Whereas, like, someone like me or you or even your brother would play through, and it is just a whole different strategic experience. Like, and that's why you have, like, people like speedrunners that are able to, reproduce very fast playthrough times, and it's because they have that strategy over the weight of skills, drops, and like physically being able to play. But it also, I guess it would come into a whole different light if you're doing like PvP versus PvM, because in Magic you have the addition of you have your deck, but it's like, what's the other person's deck? And I think it would become complicated. I'm speaking now more from Diablo 2, because I've never PvP'd in Path of Exile 2. I don't think it's meant to be a big deal, according to their developers. But in Diablo 2, it would be, well, what's my opponent? What are the possible skills? What are the possible items? And based on all of those answers, your setup would be different. So I think it's just like two different sides of a coin. But I mean, that's just an opinion. I'm not. I haven't spoken to the Jin or anything.
Yeah, he hasn't given you his own opinion about this, and now you're just working into my
Yeah.
subconscious. Yeah, I mean, it's a fun game at the end of the day. It's a lot. There's a lot of battles to be had, even with those, seemingly goofy, unique monsters that you stumble upon. That all of a sudden now it actually is a real challenge. Like the one guy who was holding a tower or something in his hands in Act 3, just right out of the gates, like right outside of town. Once you actually get to town or whatever it was, and he's just there to just screw up everything right away. Once you get to his ruins, you realize that he's gonna just keep smashing you until you actually kill him.
Yeah, he was like
He-
battling against a deck of cards that if they draw one thing, it's over. Because if he hit you once, it was just over.
Yeah,
And
he
it was
had
such
the
a
kill
simple
card.
fight, and yet, dude, I was getting so frustrated, dude. At one point, I'm mad at Kevin. I'm like, quit drawing monsters in. And at other points, I'm
Yeah.
like coming up with plans. Like I'm like, this is 100% what we need to do, and that stupid monster would end my play, and I would like obviously die and be like, okay, well, Kevin, that was wrong. I don't know what to do.
Yeah, I
Like,
think we were too involved, too deep into playing that night, where things were just too casual at that point. We had kind of just walked through things, and then we got up against that guy and realized, okay, we actually had to like take a moment, compose ourselves, and as you said, let's just give this guy some attention real quick and focus on this guy. Like, yeah, you can't really avoid him. Might as well just take our time and beat him.
I think he was set there to be like a wake up.
Yeah.
I think that game probably paces you. Like, we're feeling good, and like, we're like, yeah, we're pretty strong, and the game's just like, hey, just to remember, I can still
Yeah,
kick
we
your
control.
ass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun though.
Well, Path of Exile 2, the release will come out fully next year. What does Magic the Gathering have in store for us next year?
It's got a lot. The really exciting one right now, where people are just throwing out speculations, is the last of 6 sets that they're going to release in 2025. And they're, let me actually pull something up here. It's called, well, right now they just have it listed as TBA Universes Beyond Release. So immediately people are trying to speculate, saying, okay, what is like a huge genre of, like, what's a big notable name world that has not collided with Magic the Wizards of the Coast yet? And some articles that I read recently were talking about Harry Potter, which would be insane. To see Harry, Hermione, and Ron show up would be wild. Maybe the three-headed dog could make an appearance.
That already. They haven't done Harry Potter?
No, Lord of the Rings just came out, and that was kind of fun, but it's not all legal, modern legal, so standard play and whatnot. Where they're now changing it so that in 2025, everything that gets released will be all, I believe, modern legal. I do believe that is true, which would be fun, or maybe 4 of the 6 sets, but I could probably confirm that on a later episode once I dive into it a little bit more. But it is exciting. There's 6 that come out. We did talk about, I think, 2 already briefly. The first one was Innistrad Remastered, and I mentioned that, I think, because that Innistrad Midnight Hunt was one of the first sets that I got my hands on and got me into Magic. One of the first full boxes I opened up, a bunch of packs, and then I think I got a collector box as well that I split with a buddy of mine. So I have a real emotional connection with that set, and I probably will go full tilt, go all the way, and get whatever I can when that one releases, which is January 24th to be specific. The next one after that, we also talked briefly on. It's called Aether Drift, I believe is the name. Releases February 14th, cool. And yeah, this one is a high-speed, high-stakes death race across 3 different planes. Magic players can choose their racer with 10 two-colored aligned teams from goblins, insects, and other stuff as they fight for the finish line and a chance to win the coveted trophy, the Aether Spark.
Is this like car racing?
Yeah, and it's with vehicles, and I think those vehicles are going to be up against dinosaurs, so it's going to be this wild, and I think there's going to be a third kind of unknown plane, from what at least I've read, which makes it, again, somewhat exciting because it's kind of in the dark. Nobody really knows, at least at this point, in the public eye, what is going to be happening with that, so I'm excited because it's always nice to introduce like beyond crazy creatures, 10 10s, 12 12s, 15, 8. There's an 18-6 that was out there a couple years ago. Something like that. It's like, it sets the tone for a match immediately. You're like, what is that doing on the battlefield? That has to die immediately. I have to use my destroy creature card on that now. Hopefully before your turn ends. And then there's a couple others throughout the year. They're introducing Tarkir Dragonstorm in April, which I think is going to be all about dragons and maybe some reprints or maybe just some other ideas, which is exciting.
Let me tell you what, I'm going to get into that.
Yeah.
I want some dragons,
Yeah.
dude.
Dragons can be a little bit overpriced as far as mana costs goes, in my mind, but you will stumble upon some that are perfect, and a perfect dragon in my eyes is going to be those 4 or 5 mana cards that you can get out there and actually have something to use them with early game. Manaform Hellkite is one of my favorite cards in the game and my favorite dragon, so we could probably look that up a little bit later.
Well, dude, I mean, I don't really have a collection of Magic yet. Like, they all go in a box, which I know you frown upon, but
as long as they're
really
dust-free.
Well, they are dust-free, but there's, I mean, there might be a little dust in there, but I could imagine a binder of dragon. Like, that could be the thing I collect. Like, all dragons from Magic the Gathering. That would be so much fun, dude.
One of the coolest decks I ever played against goes back to my first week on Arena. And I didn't have enough cards to build my own deck, so I was just fooling around, and I was just playing in like a regular open play match. So it was just like, it wasn't ranked at all. And this person I was playing against had nothing but dragons, and it was a crazy like 4-color deck. So in a deck like that, it's like you have to be really skilled to put a deck like that together and then play it well and beat your opponent. And it usually is like a slow ramp up deck. And I couldn't believe what I was watching, where these, like, the dragons were, all these mechanisms I was getting introduced all in that one game, where it was having him exile cards off the top of his library, shuffle cards back from his graveyard into the library. He was adding, like, there was just a lot going on, and it kind of threw me for a loop, and I realized right away I fell in love with it, but then I was like, wait a second. I can't fall in love with a deck that's so complicated, kind of like these detectives and stuff. It's like I should probably focus on like a monocolored deck, work my way up, and go from there, not jump right into it. But dragons, I 100% would say go for it. They're fun. They're a lot of fun. And then
I was gonna collect Yu-Gi-Oh for literally the dragons. I got some rare card I hated, but if it had been the dragon, dude, I've been all over.
Oh yeah. And the dragons always have flying. They're always fire breathing for the most part, and you'll get the occasional weird ones like a plains, so white with colorless, and then those dragons are probably going to do some sort of thing with life. But you can create some insane combinations just solely with dragons. So it's exciting to see what's going to come out of that one. And then after that, we've got Magic the Gathering Final Fantasy, which, yes, you guessed it, the beloved Final Fantasy series is merging with Magic to have some wild stuff.
That's insane.
Yeah,
but okay.
And I think they're going to go.
I don't even know how to take that. Like,
yeah, apparently it's going to be from the original Final Fantasy all the way through the most recently released Final Fantasy, which is 16, that they're on now. So that's going to be crazy. I'm sure that's going to bring in a lot of Final Fantasy fans into the game. And then following that was in June, and then we've got Edge of Eternities on August 1st, which will be, let's see here, players will visit the Edge, a science fantasy setting that sits outside of the multiverse, bordering the entirety of the Blind Eternities. So and I'm taking this from a website called Commander's Herald. If anybody wants to look at this website and get a little bit more information, but what they say here is, in the edge, there are stars of mana and aether, worlds that orbit them, and spaceships that travel between solar systems. Edge of Eternities follows a team of salvagers as they explore Sothera, a galaxy that is centered around a slowly collapsed star. So, not really sure exactly what that all means, but again, it's going to be wild. Should be fun. Hopefully some new cards and some new concepts for everybody. And then
Sounds cool, too.
And then we're bringing it back to Spider-Man later in the year. I don't know if they have a date specifically on that one. And then right after that will be the Universes Beyond release to be announced, which hopefully, it is going to be something that draws in a lot of people who are familiar with something such as Harry Potter. So we'll see.
You know that Marvel collection is going to have some insanely priced cards because it's Marvel.
They're going to do wild stuff with artwork. Well, that's what they were saying with Final Fantasy. They're actually going to get artists from Final Fantasy to help out and maybe have their own selective collective cards. So who knows what's to come in 2025 other than a bunch of new deck ideas, cards, collectibles, artwork, everything. So it should be fun, especially with Marvel. Everybody loves Marvel, and why not? If you don't want to watch the movie, play the movie in real life with the deck.
Yeah, I'm more down with that. But I do that, dude. If they had done any, they could have picked a lot of other Marvel characters, I would not have been as excited. Spider-Man the movies have been, and that's a really important part to Marvel for me, are the movies, and Spider-Man did really well with all of theirs. Now Pokemon, I don't really have as much knowledge as you have about Magic with releases, but I know the next one in the Pokemon card collection is another prismatic set. It's crystally Pokemon. They're crystalline. It's like the Swarovski crystal of Pokemon. I don't even know if that... Yeah, I don't understand if that's in the game or the show. Because they did at one point, and I hated it at first, and then I grew to love it. There was actually a mini-series that it turned me. But they came out with Mega Evolutions, and that was the first thing that was just absolutely not Pokemon. And then every blue moon they just come out with some random stuff that is just they're just gonna do it for a while and then forget it ever happened kind of deal. And so I don't know if that's what these are, if there's that's part of the show, they're prismatic evolutions, or if it's just strictly art. And who knows after that, man. They come out with so many, it's way too many sets to ever keep up with. But what potentially, and I don't think there's been an announcement, it is just the time frame. We are overdue for another generation of Pokemon.
Oh, yeah.
Which means a whole new set, and this may be something that's special. And I don't know if it will be regarded that way in Japan, which is really what matters for Pokemon, but it will be the 10th generation. And I imagine that will mean some very special things. Who knows, man? We might get evolutions of Pokemon from Generation 1, they could do all sorts of crazy stuff. We might get some weird thing we're not ready for, they've got cars, Pokemon that are vehicles now, Pokemon that are chandeliers, ice cream cones. Who knows what the next generation will hold? But it's always an exciting time. I'm a bit behind, but I would really like to get back into knowing all of the Pokemon and looking at them. The games really helped with that because you would catch them and learn them, and you'd see where they were naturally in the game, and you would just kind of develop this understanding of each of them a little better. But that's what's exciting with Pokemon. As far as the card sets, I don't know that we have that many announced yet. But they come out quick with them, so it'll be, like, I guess they're main sets, and when you get your main set, then all the rest are kind of like variations of that. So it seems to be less, I don't want to say random, but less themed than Magic. Like Magic has these very specific themes, and I'm it's funny because some of those you say, and it's like, the dinosaur one I wasn't that into. I know people are hype about it, and the car one, it's like I can't get excited because I'm just having trouble wrapping my head around it. It's like pod racing for Star Wars. It's like I'm not against it. I just don't know that I care that much about it. But then, I mean, dragons. It's like shut up and sign me up. Just take my money now. Like, I'll pre-order. Let's get.
Well,
I want me some dragons.
Well, you know what? If I'm going to have to expose you to some vehicles, let me help you search one of them right now, please.
All right.
Search for Mech Titan Core. Mech Titan Core. Because, yeah, these vehicles are going to have to compete with these crazy dinosaurs. I mean, I think that's pretty much what we're up against here. It's like, who's gonna actually win this race? I think.
All right.
At the end of the day,
I see an artifact.
Yes.
That says vehicle.
Yep. And it's a 2-4 in the bottom right corner. 2 colorless. All right. So yeah. So this is a vehicle. So this means, so at the bottom of a vehicle, you always have to look for that crew. Crew at the very bottom. That's important. Crew 2 means if you have a creature with 2 power, and again, the numbers on the bottom right are the power/toughness. So as long as it has 2 power, it can crew this vehicle. So if it were to crew the vehicle, at the end of the day, I'll kind of rush through it. It just, that creature becomes tapped. The vehicle is now crewed. Now the vehicle can either attack or block. And in this case, it's a 2/4 creature at that point once it's crewed. Now, this card I love so much because, like, if you just read that, pretty much the one ability of this card, that's what makes this unbelievable. You can just exile it and 4 other artifact creatures or vehicles you control. Then you create this unbelievable creature that doesn't make any sense. 10/10 artifact creature token with flying, vigilance, trample, lifelink, and haste. That's all colors. And then when it leaves the battlefield, return all the stuff that you exiled back to the battlefield, tapped under their owner's control. So I wouldn't say quickly in the game, but early in the game, you can really just fuck them up completely, your opponent, and just exile everything you can, get this guy into this 10/10 artifact creature transformed, and now you're really dealing some damage because most of the time, your opponent may or may not have a flying style deck. So if they have no flying creatures, they can't block this. Unless they have reach, which again is kind of rare, but there are creatures out there that have reach and are very strong on their own. That do pair well with other deck ideas. But this guy with flying, vigilance, trample, and then lifelink, you're going to get 10 life if he attacks and he deals any damage. So already, early in the game, maybe you lost 10 life already and you only have 10. Boom, this will put you right back to 20 just by him attacking. So this, as far as vehicles go, this was the first vehicle that I got introduced to in the game from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty that really just threw me for a loop because I was like, I've never seen a 10/10 creature before I stumbled upon this guy. So I think don't knock those vehicles just yet.
Well, I'm like this with all this different stuff, like gaming and cards and all that. The fantasy is really an important thing to me. And I'll say the art to this card sells us a lot better because, I just picture pod racers and Hot Wheels. And this thing has the mechanized legs of an ostrich, this little ball body, and this weird robotic samurai head with like a silver half crescent crown thing, and it's all metal and it's all robotic, and it's a neat looking card. and it's cool looking. And when we talk about,
Bless you.
excuse me, when we talk about vehicles, the word vehicle and the idea of vehicle just seems so lame to me. And this card definitely brings a different light to that as far as the fantasy of it. I think, are attracted mostly to the mechanics of the card itself in actual play of Magic the Gathering. And I'm still like
Stuck on the artwork.
I don't know.
It's only half the
and
battle.
That's why I like the dragons, because I'm like, I know they're gonna look cool. But this thing, I feel much better, like this being played, and I'm more interested in you reading the card than if it's like, all right, Ford F-150 has a crew of 2. I'm like, dude, like I
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's not a vehicle like that. I think again, these vehicles are going to be. I think it's cool where they're introducing it with these dinosaurs. I believe in that second set. So I think it's going to be like the vehicles are going to protect your creatures because the vehicle is going to have a better chance of defending or attacking against that dinosaur than your just normal creatures on the battlefield. And that's pretty much what you're always doing when you throw out a vehicle. It's that vehicle now in most cases is going to be better than what you've got on the battlefield, just in case you need to block, And what's cool is like you can crew this vehicle with a creature or multiple creatures, block with this vehicle, let this vehicle die, and then your creatures are still going to be alive. They don't die if this dies. So another interesting concept you introduce to the game, and different strategies unfold when you think of something like that.
I'm gonna have a PhD in Magic without ever I've played 4 matches.
No, we're gonna get you into it, man. You're gonna keep playing Arena. Those detectives were just a nuisance. And then in 2025 we've got tournaments that are coming up. The first one will be in Chicago, February 21st to February 23rd. Will be the first Pro Tour of the season, and then the second Pro Tour will be June 20th to June 22nd in Las Vegas. So that should be a lot of fun. Probably a big turnout there as well. And then Atlanta will be in September on the 26th through the 28th. So a lot of excitement, and I would imagine we're going to see some really, really strong players, probably once we just saw in Magic the World Championship 30, show up and dominate with some of their deck ideas out there with some of these new sets. So if anything, if you don't want to buy any of these sets, just watch these guys play them, and then from there, pull their ideas and put them in your own decks and go from there.
Do you plan on watching them?
I do. Yeah, it was a lot of fun this last go around with the World Championship 30. Just seeing these players who are so knowledgeable, and they're doing moves that I would do too. So it's kind of cool to be like, okay, I'm following along with everything that's happening, but then all of a sudden, what really shows is just the drafting. The drafting is just unbelievable how good they are, and how you can see that they're toying with different ideas by them looking at 2 cards, and they only have 10 seconds left to choose between those 2 cards. And you can see in their mind, they're like, okay, all of it's chance. You don't know what you're going to pull out of those packs in a draft round. And, you're assuming people are pulling the best cards, leaving you with nothing left in the pack as you keep rotating your packs.
When's the very next one? The very next tournament?
That'll be the first one that I just mentioned, which, once again, I'll give you the exact dates, will be February 21st to February 23rd.
So, in February, I might try to watch. Because when you go over these dates, it's like, I don't know that I care. But you know what? It's because you're excited about them, and you enjoy watching the other ones. So I might try to watch in February and try to get that same appreciation for these things.
Yeah.
Because, I'm not going to compete in these puppies. I don't even have a deck, but... I can't Yu-Gi-Oh! Heart of the Card this, but it would probably be interesting to watch the commentators explain stuff as well.
Yeah, they're going to be, even with this past one, like they're going to be talking about cards that are going to be great to play after the card that just showed up in the battlefield. And if they don't have a camera angle that shows you what's in their hand, they're just going to be speculating, and they're going to be running through so many different card names, and they're just going to be briefly touching on the card name and not telling you anything about the mechanics or the abilities or anything, because they're going to assume that you know that. So what I would say is draft on Arena beforehand, just to get a feel for what drafting is like, so that when you see these professionals do it, you'll have a much more of an appreciation, especially if you are able to draft that exact set that you're watching them play with in real life, because that's pretty much what was happening with Duskmourn in the World Championship 30. That set just got released, and those guys already had complete control over their deck ideas. And just watching it unfold was pretty fun to experience. It is pretty much like a live sporting event. And if you know what you're looking for, it's very exciting. To an outsider, it may not be as exciting just because there's so much, of an information overload, and you don't really want to be learning in that type of an environment. But if you have a touch of experience with draft, you'll have a blast watching it.
I don't mean to brag, but I'm like a champion at this or that.
You are a master.
I don't know how many I've gotten right, but I'm feeling pretty good about it.
Oh yeah. Well, I think it's cool that you got into Bloomburrow, right? The creatures, you said that you kind of fell in love with the otters and those cute little mice, and then from there right away into Duskmourn, the horrors that awaited you. So,
I liked both of those. They
the dichotomy.
I don't know, some of the One Piece ones were. And I watched 7 or 8 episodes of that before I had to pay to see more, and then I got into Path of Exile. But it was some of the characters were weird. Not understanding how they fit into the universe. It's harder for me to appreciate them like I do the Magic, because the Magic are just creative art cards. And even if I know nothing about the mechanics, I can still look at it and be like, ooh, this is pretty sick looking. And, Dragon Ball is I know that show in and out. I've watched every episode. So it's I know the scenes or the attack or, I feel like it's cool for what I've already seen. But Magic so far, 2 for 2 on the sets.
Yeah, I'm happy you got into those. There's plenty of great cards in both of those sets. And I think that as we continue to add more cards into standard rotation, a lot of cards are going to bring out, the crazy abilities of a lot of these mice and, nightmares that you're now starting to familiarize yourself with.
They need to come out with a real world nightmares. It's just you pull out IRS. It's audit.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that would be that really would be a nightmare for most people. Well, let me jump into the this or that segment. So again, it's time for this one or that one. Which one will it be? So we're choosing between 2 cards, Michael, in competitive play. Which do you think is the better of the 2? I'm going to give you a difficult this or that tonight. So are you ready for this one?
Oh man, I shouldn't have been bragging. But yeah, I'm ready.
I'm jumping heavily into it. And these are going to be coming from Outlaws of Thunder Junction. Both of them. So and I'll comment both of them are uncommon. Okay, so this is a new mechanic. On each of these, it's called Spree. And what Spree is, choose 1 or more additional costs, which means just you can pick either of the abilities that are Spree, or one or the other, or both of them. If there were 3, you could pick all 3, but both of these cards just have 2. So let me read them to you. So the first is this. It's called Return the Favor. It's 2 mountains as a base cost, and then the plus symbol. And then, so the plus symbol for the first ability is 1 colorless. So essentially, if you just wanted to play it for that ability, it would just pay 2 mountains and then just another mana. And that first ability is copy target instant spell, sorcery spell, activated ability, or triggered ability. You may choose new targets for the copy. The second +1 ability of this spree is change the target of target spell or ability with a single target. So if you were to spend 4 mana, with at least 2 of those mana being mountains, you would be able to play this card and play all of those abilities on it. Okay?
All right.
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, this one is a different mechanic. I think Spree might literally have been introduced in with this set, which was just before Bloomburrow. And then we've got that for this segment. That is Lively Dirge. It's a sorcery. They're both, the first one was an instant. I forgot to tell you. This one is a 2 mana sorcery. 1 skull, so swamp, and then 1 colorless. The first ability is a +1 colorless. Search your library for a card, put it into your graveyard, then shuffle. So again, search your library for a card, put it into your graveyard, then shuffle your library. The second ability on this is for an additional 2 colorless. Return up to 2 creature cards with total mana value 4 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So in essence, Lively Dirge, that is focused on getting creatures into your yard, getting them in your hand. Return the Favor, this is all about changing the target of a spell or an ability or, whatever it might be. Triggered ability, that sort of thing. So, in competitive play, of the two, which would you favor more? Return the Favor or Lively Dirge? This or that?
Well, this is a tough one. I don't want to overvalue this card, but the way I've been choosing these at some points, and it's worked out so far, is if I'm having trouble comprehending exactly how a card would work because of the vast interactions of other Magic the Gathering cards, I've been assuming that because there's such a large database of cards that it is just basically more valuable than I can fathom. So I feel it's like I don't trust this feeling right now, but I'm going to stick with it because it's been working. So I'm going to choose this as the more favored card for competitive play.
Well, in this case, Michael, I myself am disheartened. I'm holding back tears in this very moment, and I almost had to pause the podcast to grab a tissue box, but it's okay.
It was bound to happen.
Okay, so I will at least say that with this, Return the Favor, what's really fun about that card is that there are no, it's very much a blue card. This is an island card that you're playing, essentially. There's not a lot of these cards that are mountains. So if you have a mono mountain deck, you would just surprise your opponent if you were to just throw this out of the nowhere, because it is an instant, and in just a moment, a moment's notice, no notice at all, in fact, your opponent can just say, okay, I'm going to target your best creature, and I'm going to kill it. Well, this card can literally be for just 3 mana. You wouldn't even have to do the full ability of the card and do the spree and do the other one. You could literally just pick one of these and just say, okay, I'm going to copy that target instant or sorcery. For example, okay, destroy this creature. I'm going to now copy that and choose new targets for the copy. So now you're just going to copy it and target their own creature, which is so out of left field. most players are not expecting that to happen. So this was a really cool addition to Magic in general. And it opens the door for a lot of really wild experiences in a red deck when you can actually more or less counter somebody's spell. But that is where I say I'm not as much of a fan with it in a competitive atmosphere, because you're pretty much having to rely on the fact that they're going to target one of your creatures or, whatever else, an ability that might happen. You can prevent that from helping them and make it help you. You're pretty much, you need them to be on the offense with that card, and you're just kind of sneakily waiting for yourself to be on the defense, which is rare with a red deck. That card tonight, Lively Dirge, is based off of just finding the cards that you have in your deck, get them in your yard, and get them out of your yard. And that second ability of it for 2 mana, 2 colorless mana, which is a little costly, but it is return up to 2 creature cards with total mana value 4 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So if you have one amazing creature for 4 mana, pull it out of your yard, put it on the battlefield. If you have 2 mana creatures, get those on the battlefield from your yard. I mean, that's an amazing card to be able to utilize your yard. And it's not that expensive. You could always go for the first one and just search your library for a card, put it in your graveyard, and shuffle. And maybe that card alone could be pulled out of your graveyard just with another card that you have in your hand. So I really enjoy the second of these 2 cards, Lively Dirge, because it's more based off of your own ideas. You don't have to worry about your opponent and relying on your opponent to kill you with like an ability or a card that they might have. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay. So yeah, I love both of them. I thought they were kind of cool to put up against each other to see which would actually prevail. Believe it or not, you were correct in a sense in that the Return to Favor is the more pricey card. And again, I really do believe it's because it's just it's a card that you're not gonna usually come across in a red deck, and it will throw somebody for a loop. Like, they won't expect that card at all, and it is fun to play. But I've held it in my hand.
I want to make a deck with that card.
Yeah, I mean, but the thing is, like, I've held it in my hand and not been able to use it, and I've saved my mana anticipating that they're going to try to destroy my amazing creature, and they don't have anything to destroy my amazing creature. So now they're playing a creature on their turn. I have nothing to use that card for, and then they pass to my turn, and now it's like, well, I can't even. I wasn't even able to use this, and now I want to still keep this mana in case I can use it. And it kind of gives you that, it starts to give you that little like mind fuckery where you're like, okay, like, what am I supposed to do here? Am I supposed to be on the offense, or am I supposed to play on the offense, like play like as if I'm being offensive and really try to hide this defensive card in my hand and be able to play it at any time? So it can make things a little bit tricky. Anyway, it was a big difficult decision you chose, and you chose wrong, but it's okay, Michael. We're still friends. We're still buds. At the end of the day, we're Black Lotus buds.
I'll never live this down. I've worked my whole life to avoid a moment just like this, and despite my best efforts, here we are.
But you had a great reason to back it up. I mean, there are a lot of different ideas that first one introduces. Again, it's so new to the game. It's fun. It's fun when you come across something like that. I even had another one that I didn't want to bring up because it got banned. But it was like, it's a red card. It's called Tybalt's Trickery, I think. And you can just counter the opponent's spell. It is a red card. It's like 1 colorless, 1 mountain, and it's like target the opponent's spell that they just cast. Like anything, just target it or counter it. But then it comes at a cost, because those are the blue decks. Blue decks, you can just counter a spell, and it's like, that's what a blue deck is. With this red one, it's like counter their spell. Now they get to exile the top 3 cards of their library. They choose one at random. They can play it without paying its mana cost. So it's like, okay, you could really be screwing yourself up by playing that card. But sometimes you do need to counter a card. And if you have a mono red deck, or just that one card in your deck, you can use it. You might as well just use it and hope that they just get a whole bunch of lands in their hand. Anyway, fun stuff.
I just want boxes of Magic.
Gosh, I know, right?
I do really I do kind of wish I had like enough cards, and I had that card, and I could. It's rare that we go across a I guess you teach me about a card, and I don't really ever care that much about its use because I'm like, I'm not gonna do it. This is the first time I kind of like want to build a deck around that card and see how good it could be, but I just don't have those resources yet. One day I'll have the library. It'll be like a regular library, and you'll be like, wow, all these books, and I'll be like, books? No, no, no. These are all cards. Like these, just like cases of cards each. Like I don't even know how to read. Okay, unless it's on a Pokemon or Magic trading card, I just can't. I can't even read.
You've seen those. You've seen those libraries where they have like the wheel that you turn, and then you can put all the aisles right up against each other. I can see like you having a layer in your house. You're like, oh, you haven't seen my basement's basement? Oh, come down to the second below the ground level. Let me show you the trove of cards that I have been collecting.
Just I'm picturing those like warehouse lights where you flip the switch and they cascade on with the big noise. It's like you flip it and you hear like poosh 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 as each light cuts on.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, yes, this is the upper level of my first set of cards.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, listen, I know we just finished this or that, but how do you feel about going into our last segment here?
Why not? Let's jump in. Let's jump in. We've got a whole year ahead of us for all sorts of fun stuff. Yeah.
That's true. But I'm thinking when we're done, I mean, we get to jump back into Path of Exile as well,
Oh, yeah. We'll have to give our listeners our tags or whatever it might be, gamer tags, so that if anybody wants to join in on us, we'll have fun. But we're having a blast just playing by ourselves right now and just kind of learning the game itself and seeing how things evolve, especially when you just find the items on your own. So I have a blast playing with you, and I definitely would be on board just keeping it just you and I.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's cool to have people join. We tried that yesterday too. We had some dude join us, but he was like,
we didn't want to be rushed. Yeah. It's like, get out of here with your insane skills. I don't want to help here.
I think he was like,
you got offended.
16 levels ahead. He was just trying to be nice.
Yeah.
I get it. It's a good feeling too when you help someone else in an RPG.
Definitely. Yeah. Nothing but love.
Well, okay. I guess it means it's time for Sejum's Satisfaction. A game with points and prizes. Kevin, you have an astounding 815 points. Suffice to say that the mighty Jin Sejum is very pleased. This is the most pleased he has ever been. If Sejum reaches maximum satisfaction, he will send you in real life prize. I wanted to also notate that in this episode, you have the potential to win your prize tonight.
Oh, jeez. Too much pressure. I'm going to suck.
Yeah. I'm going to make this... It's going to be extremely difficult. At the end of the last game, the Mantis Shrimp Dojo Master was revealed to be the Jin. And he busted through the ceiling of a great palace, and you stepped onto his mighty claw. Mm-hmm. Well, in this scene, the Jin looks at you and speaks with the depth of an all-powerful being, and he says to you, "You have satisfied me so much, I'm over the moon." The Mantis Shrimp Jin pulls his arm back far beyond his head, completely cocked, and he launches you like a catapult straight to the moon. You shoot faster than the speed of light, slam into the surface of the moon. There's a huge explosion, dust and rubble, but you are completely fine, unharmed, just like you were Superman. Kevin, right now, what are you thinking as you land onto the moon like an asteroid?
I was about to say, I feel like I was a comet that arrived at my final destination in pieces. I'm a little bit worried. I think I'm questioning if I'm still human at this point or if I'm all but a dream, an illusion to myself. I'm searching for dust moon dust just to hold in my hand and feel the cold, frosty, unearthly experiences that you would expect out there. And I'm starting to have some real fright over the next sequence of events. So yeah, that's how I'm at right now.
Understandable. Well, in that fear, your attention is drawn to your right as you notice a strange motion, and it's a moon rock. It rolls over and it sprouts arms and legs. To your bewilderment, it raises its hands cupped forward and reveals them, palms up, to have 3 figurines. And this rock, with lips you do not see, asks you to choose between these figurines. And you see, in his hands, a lizard man made of diamond, a bloody voodoo doll of a solid 8 by 1 by 1 block of hair, or a skeleton man carved from bone. Which one will you pick?
Oh boy. The first one was
So
a
we have
lizard man?
A lizard man, a diamond lizard man. You've got a weird, bloody, hairy voodoo doll that's just in a block, and you have a skeleton man carved from bone.
Gosh, I hope it's not this voodoo doll. I'm going with A. Final answer.
All right. Well, you choose the lizard man, and as you pick it up, it turns to dust. The moon rock lands as if it had never had arms and legs at all, and below you, a platform begins to lower. And as it does, you enter a facility like the which you have never seen, full of technology and space age, just amazing lights and platforms. And you see these lizard men, and one enters covered in robes, and he tells you, welcome, that you've entered the secret lair of the sophisticated lizard men, and he is here to ask you a series of questions. As you know, your good friend Michael has purchased another PSA 10 card, and he wants to know, what set do you think it's from? Is it A, Pokemon, B, Magic the Gathering, C, One Piece, or D, Sorcery? And these are all worth 25 points each.
I'm going with C, One Piece. Is that what C was?
It is.
Yeah,
it is.
I'm going with C. Final answer.
The lizard man turns to another partner of his, and they grumble in a language you're not familiar with, and he just shakes his head no. And you get the feeling that you chose incorrectly. Well, Kevin, the card that I purchased today, I chose a really cheap card. This might be the cheapest one I've gotten. It was $24.99 with shipping included. And it is a Pokemon card, Mew, from Battle Academy. It's a card from 2020, a gem mint, and it's just Mew. It's just a little cute little Mew. Now, for your next question, you get a little bit of information, and the lizard man informs you of some of the details of this card to make this a little more fair. So Mew, it has 80 health points. It has a single attack, and that attack requires 2 psychic energy. The question is, what is the attack power of Mew's one attack? It's called Psy Shot. And this is just raw power. There's no coin flip. There's no criteria. There's no discarding of an energy. It is 2 psychic energy, and Mew has this attack permanently. Is it A, 40, B, 50, C, 80, or D, 90?
40, 50, 80, 90. I don't think it's 90. I also don't think it's 40, 50, or 80. 50 just seems too cheap. 80 sounds kind of right. Maybe 50, but I'm locking in 80. Final answer.
All right. The lizard man again turns to his partner, and they murmur in a foreign language. He looks at you again, and you see that same shake of the head. It appears that you've guessed incorrectly, and the answer, Kevin, is 50.
Mm-hmm. Damn.
So it is Psyshot. He's a basic Pokemon, so he gets to plop right out there. It is actually a little underwhelming to some of the cards you see, and even TCG Pocket, but it's not like too crazy though or anything like that. I have a lot of details I want to tell you about this card, but before we do, I have one more question. And so the Lizard Man, he asked you, what is the quantity of this card in Gem Mint? And it's always the same. Is it A, 1 through 10, B, 11 through 50, C, 51 through 500, or D, more than 500?
I had 202 stuck in my head. I'm locking in C. Final answer.
Once again, the lizard men turn to each other.
No.
They whisper in a foreign language. And
No.
They look at you and shake their head no. Now, this card, this is an interesting pick for me. And I even said last podcast, I don't want to pick cards that are more than 500.
10,000.
But I was having trouble finding one in short time. I wanted one for this podcast. And, you know, this one has 565 versions of it. But you know what's odd about that is that this isn't even a collectible card. And what I mean by that is that this is technically a promotional card, but not in the sense of it's as a promotion. It is from the set Battle Academy, which isn't a set at all. It's actually a physical product you can buy in, I believe, unlimited print, essentially, that is to teach players the game of Pokemon. So it looks like a Pokemon card. It is a Pokemon card.
Wow.
But it has a special set stamp to indicate it is from this, basically like a pre-made deck also would carry this stamp. So it doesn't really have any rarity, and I imagine that's why instead of being in the 20,000s, it's only in the 500s, which for a card like this, you wouldn't even think it's graded. Mm-hmm. But the reason I got it is because I wanted to have... I'm imagining these in a set of PSA cards that I display. And I think it's neat to have some outliers of cards that
you're not going
to
see
showing
often.
hobbies as a whole. Well, cool. Yeah. And so this is from a Battle Academy. And so this will always be part of the history of Pokemon. Yeah. And, if ever we don't have a Battle Academy, this will definitely be an interesting card. Be like, oh, this is from a set that kids learn to play Pokemon from. And so while it's not really rare and valuable, it was $25 and it's a Gem Mint piece of history. So I added it so I can start to have some nice quirky cards for the collection. Now, your challenge today, mind you, you have 0 points going into this round.
Oh, you didn't even remind me, but
question.
You can remind the listeners, I guess.
Yeah, well, I mean, I didn't say it. It's really coming from the Lizard Man.
Okay,
the sophisticated, high-tech moon Lizard Man. Obviously, we know that's what's up there. So, for this question round, this won't be a multiple choice, and since we really addressed everything on the card already, this is going to be from the lore portion of the Mew card. And this will be the hardest question I've ever proposed to you because I'm not giving you any lead.
Okay.
So just tell me what's the answer. No, I'm just kidding. So the card reads, because it can use all kinds of moves, many scientists believe Mew to be blank. So what is the blank? What do scientists believe Mew to be? And to elaborate, I'll read it one more time again. But when it says it can use all kinds of moves, in the games, you can only teach certain Pokemon certain things. So you couldn't teach a water Pokemon an electric Pokemon attack because they just didn't understand how to use it. They're water Pokemon. They know Water Gun. They don't know Thunderbolt. Mew has the ability to learn every and all moves possible. So I'll read this one more time, and I want you to do your best to fill in the blank. I'll be fair if you get anywhere close to this. But for the challenge question, it says, because it can use all kinds of moves, many scientists believe Mew to be what?
I'm gonna talk this out. So,
Okay.
just like they would on what? Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, right? Regis Philbin would pass it
Yep.
off, and they'd say, "Okay, well, I think it's not A because of it." So, what I'm thinking here is shapeshifter in my mind. But when you say scientists, it makes me think like it's got to be something medical. Okay, in like a hospital, a lab, they're creating something. What would you would be this like, you know, out of a test tube, he's this unknown substance. He carries many qualities that nobody knows. He's so enigmatic. He is the unique specimen that we can't believe exists. And I just go back to shapeshifter. I mean, it's a terrible word in this context. I don't think it's gonna really bring me home, or at least take me off the moon in either one or many pieces. But I'm just gonna go with shapeshifter and see how wrong I am.
Interesting. So, I mean, your train of thought was just beautiful. I thought you were gonna nail this the way you thought it out.
I couldn't think of anything else though.
Now, you are partially right. I mean, Mew does know the move transform, even, I believe. I mean, he knows all moves. But I think I'm gonna give you partial credit here. So the lizard man, he begins to transform and he turns into a djinn of smoke and air, so a floating apparition in front of you, and he gives a little chuckle and he just says 50 points awarded. And you, having no idea what this means, stand there in bewilderment. But the answer to this is, because it can use all kinds of moves, many scientists believe Mew to be the ancestor of Pokemon. And so, in the lore of Pokemon, Mew is basically the Adam and Eve of all Pokemon. And they don't really understand it, right? Like, they don't explain that in the show because you don't see the common ancestors between a Mew and a Pikachu.
Not at all.
But he is basically the mother of all Pokemon.
Wow,
like, it
that's
all
crazy.
started with Mew. He's like Jesus. Like, it's weird.
So what would that make Mewtwo?
Well, Mewtwo is technically a humanoid, like a human-made creation. So scientists took Mew's DNA and they tried to reanimate it, and they didn't really nail it. So they got Mewtwo, and he was a clone. He grew up in a test tube, and they tried to control him, but he was very powerful and rebelled, and there's a whole movie about it. I would recommend watching it. It's a fun watch.
Cool. Yeah.
But yeah, so that's how Mewtwo came to be. So I'm gonna give you 50 points. We don't have to worry about having your other points. Just a reminder, you got 0 in that last one.
So generous.
So that brings your total to 865 points.
Nice.
And I guess to end it here, the djinn, he chuckles, still in a pleasant mood. You've seen him get progressively more happy, although you're completely confused, as if you're in a dream, or if this is real or not, or if you've just are dying in the desert still, dying of thirst. And as you sit here and wonder, you blink, and when you open your eyes, you see lava all around you in a room full of gold coins. And that's where we'll end this episode.
Wow.
Of Sedgem Satisfaction.
Wow. And
But good
Black
job
Rose
on
Buds.
working that out and getting awarded partial points on a very impossible question.
Well, I
Um,
appreciate it. Yeah, you gave me some hope there. Or the gin at
yeah.
least gave me a chance to survive and make it to the next one. So.
Well, he's been very satisfied with you of late. So you're doing a great job.
Yeah, still riding the high of hitting those 500 big ones on that one episode. So,
Yeah.
more to come.
No, that was a good one too.
Well, it'll be exciting to see what comes out of 2025. And as we wrap this one up and wrap up the final episode of the year, are there any favorite cards that you want to throw out there? Anything in the card world that happened this year that could sign us off, send us home? Anything that's notable?
They've begin, I think, reprinting some sorcery cards, and it's speculated that it may crash the market, and I hope it crashes to the bottom because I still want to find a holy grail. So going into 2025, I haven't pulled it yet, but the thing I'm on the lookout for is one of the curio cards, the one out of like every 40 boxes you can maybe pull one if you're lucky, and that'll be my hunt. I've got a box. It'll be one of the next ones I open. I'll do half the box on my channel, so I'm excited for that.
Hell yeah. Well,
the hunt continues.
Oh yeah, and there's gonna be a lot of boxes that we all know about now coming in out of Magic this upcoming year. So with that, everybody, line your pockets, work extra hard, put in a couple extra hours, save up that money, and we can all be opening packs together. So we'll look forward to speaking to everybody into the new year, 2025. And thanks again for all joining us through this year. And we will hope to catch you all next time.